Anyway, whether it's women's rights or gay marriage, our specialist believes that these social issues are being used by a shadow movement that has been going on for decades with the intent of dividing this country. And why has it been so effective? Well, this is my particular theory, but the reason her theory, I believe, is so effective is because uniquely Americans are remarkably uncomfortable talking about the fact that people have sex, they have sex with each other, they like having sex, they do it on a regular basis. Men have sex with men, women have sex with women, men have sex with other women, women have sex with other men, and yet we cannot deal with that on some level, and as a result, anything that speaks of sex, contraception, or gay marriage has all this energy. Well, my goodness. And so why would we deal with any of that? Like, I don't know, jobs, tax code, trade, when we could fight about sex. Nancy Cohen, the historian and author of Delirium, How the Sexual Counter-Revolution is Polarizing America. I would like your assessment of my hypothesis, and then I would like you to explain yours, and then I'll release you onto the panel.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, but I also think what we're seeing is absolutely appalling, if it weren't so hilarious.
That's self-evident. I mean,
right.
Appalling is the base narrative for DC
If
these
we
days.
understood the history of the sexual counter-revolution that's been going on for 40 years, it actually wouldn't be that surprising.
And that's what your book is about.
Exactly.
So give us a sense of what it is that we don't seem to be understanding at least on a federal political level, even if we understand it in our communities a lot of ways, that you think they need to understand.
Yeah. Well, Delirium tells a story of how a small group of reactionaries who want to control sex have hijacked our politics. And it goes back to 40 years. The sexual revolution and gay rights movement and feminist movement really changed America tremendously. I mean, birth control did used to be illegal. Gay sex was a criminal act in every state. I mean, shocking. So Americans are totally fine with these changes. The vast majority of
American communities are fine with it.
The American community is fine with it, except for this very small minority who has hijacked the Republican Party.
And that minority we see today are men, but in your book, I think you go through how actually women started the counter, and how did they do that, and how did they organize?
Absolutely. So this started in 1972 and 1973 with fundamentalist and conservative women who were horrified by the changes of this. Women.
Who were horrified by the level of promiscuity, were horrified by the acceptance of homosexuality.
No, but also horrified that women would work and leave their children at home. One of their first campaigns was actually against federally subsidized childcare. So they organized through their churches and on the local level, and then they worked in PTAs, and then they worked at the precinct level of the Republican Party, and they took the Republican Party over from bottom to top. So it was actually women who forged the religious right and made it into a powerhouse in the Republican Party years before the moral majority.
That gives the effectiveness for this wedge to land in the middle of this presidential election when we're down 30 million jobs, poverty, wealth inequality, war, and we're not talking about any of it. We're dealing with this insanity when the polling suggests this is a joke. Karen, go ahead.
So my question is, in addition to sex, what role do you think, or do you get into in the book in terms of race? Because it strikes me that part of where this strategy from a political context also really became codified was really the Southern strategy, and then we saw it again in the Bush races where Karl Rove focused on, those anger points, in which again the whole idea was let's divide people and have them at each other's throats, prey on their fears, whether it's sex or race or gay sex, and keep them at each other's throats so that they, something Dylan always talks about, don't vote for their shared interests, they vote towards other interests that we tell them are what's important.
Yeah, that's a good question. I do think that race was the predominant driver of this back in the late 60s. And it was absolutely race that moved the white Southerners out of the Democratic Party into the Republican Party. But if you look at the Bush elections, he actually didn't win on gay marriage. He won on terrorism. All the studies show that he basically kept the Republican base, and that gay marriage actually brought more Democrats out to vote. I do think that there's a tiny minority of the country that's still very reactionary on racial issues, but I don't think we would see this contraceptive fight if race were really the most important thing to them right
the
now.
contraceptive fight has to go to the unresolved sex, psychology, and the power dynamics that you talk about here. Jimmy, you get the last thought here.
Well,
God help us all.
Should. Look, I just don't get why it is that people are in other people's bedrooms. I mean, the religious right seems to have this some sort of crazy opinion that all gay men run around and having sex all the time. Only if that were true. Maybe I could just try to prove them right. But unfortunately, I live 80 miles west of Washington, D.C. in a log cabin, and so my closest companion is my dog. Therefore, that is not going to happen. So I just want to know why it is that everybody needs to be in my bedroom, because you know what? I don't want to be in theirs.
Especially
so
when
what is this fascination with other people's bedrooms? Especially
when the very same people who are claiming they want the desire to control everybody's bedroom are the same people who would say the government needs to be small and get out of their lives. It confuses us.
Right.
Well, you're always talking about the fix here.
Right.
And the fix is diagnosing what the problem is, that these sexual fundamentalists control the Republican Party.
And more, even deeper to the root, that there's unresolved fear of sex in our society that motivates
so
people like that.
Everybody who disagrees with them is afraid to actually challenge them and say, this is crazy, this is ridiculous.
I'm saying it.
Great. So
are you.
Yes.
So, you know.
So, and this way to stop it is actually for everybody to stay engaged and vote.
Right. All right, listen. The other thing is these things are great for the ratings and stuff because they get everybody worked up and like to talk about it. The contraception, can you believe it? When you try to talk about tax reform, they're like, hang on a second, they're not going to watch that. Well, we need it, though. Yeah, never mind.
Tax reform gets me bothered.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, pleasure to meet you. Nice to see you, Susan, Jimmy, Karen. Thank you, guys.